Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're going to tackle one of the most used and, let's be honest, most misunderstood words in the entire world, democracy. It's one of those words everyone thinks they know the answer to, but when you really start to dig in, you realize the reality is so much more complex. We throw the word around all the time, but do we really know what we're talking about? And of course, you've probably heard this famous line from Abraham Lincoln. It's beautiful, right? Government of the people, by the people, for the people. It sounds perfect, it's inspiring, and it just feels right. But then you get quotes like this one. Democracy gives every man the right to be his own oppressor. Oof, that's a bit more cynical, isn't it? It kind of shows that these simple, poetic definitions might not be telling the whole story. The thing is, words evolve. Think about it. The word computer means something totally different today than it did 50 years ago. Democracy is exactly the same. That's why we can't just rely on a famous quote. We need a solid working definition, especially when so many completely different countries all claim to be a democracy. All right, so let's jump right in. We'll start with the most common, simple definition you've probably heard a million times. And on the surface, this sounds pretty good. It's a useful first step, for sure. It helps us draw a clear line between democracies and, say, a monarchy, where you inherit power, or a military dictatorship. Simple enough, right? Well, here's the catch. This definition isn't really adequate. I mean, if we just stick to this, we have to call nearly any country that holds any kind of election a democracy. And as you're about to see, that's incredibly misleading. So to really get to the bottom of this, we need to poke some holes in that simple definition. We have to ask some tougher questions. 4 key questions, in fact, that really put a government to the test. Okay, so these questions lead us to what you can think of as the 4 pillars of democracy. This is where we build a much stronger, much more useful framework for understanding what we're actually talking about. So pillar number 1, the final decision-making power has to rest with the people who are actually elected. It's not enough to just have elected officials. They have to be the ones calling the real shots. A perfect example of this is Pakistan after the 1999 military coup. Now, they held elections, and people voted for representatives. But, and this is a huge but, the real power, the final say on the big decisions, wasn't with those elected folks. Nope, it was with General Musharraf and an unelected military council. The elected officials were basically just for show. All right, pillar number 2. This one's all about the election itself. Because, just having an election doesn't cut it. It has to be a real, genuine contest, free and fair, where the people in power actually have a legitimate chance of losing. And this is a fantastic comparison. You've got 2 very different ways a country can fail this test. So in China, they have elections, but you can only vote for candidates that the Communist Party approves of. So there's no real choice, is there? Then you look at Mexico. At least up until the year 2000. They had different parties, but the one ruling party used all sorts of dirty tricks to make sure they never lost. In both cases, you have an election, but it's not free or fair. Okay, on to pillar number 3. This one sounds so simple, but it is so important. Each adult citizen gets 1 vote, and each of those votes has to have 1 value. It's all about political equality. And you can see here just how many ways this principle gets broken. I mean, you have places where entire groups were denied the vote, like women in Saudi Arabia until 2015, or where the rules make it super hard for a minority group to even get voting rights, like in Estonia. And then you have Fiji, where, get this, the vote of an indigenous Fijian is literally worth more than the vote of an Indian Fijian. All of these completely violate that 1 person, 1 vote, 1 value idea. And that brings us to our 4th and final pillar. This one is absolutely crucial, because it's all about what happens after the votes are counted. Just because a party wins an election doesn't mean they get a blank check to do whatever they want. Let's look at Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe. His party was genuinely popular and they kept winning elections. But over the years, his government slowly changed the constitution to give him more and more power. They harassed the opposition, made protests illegal, took control of the media, and pressured judges. See, winning an election is necessary for democracy, but it is not sufficient. If you don't also respect basic citizens' rights and the rule of law, you're not a democracy. Okay, so after all of that, you might be thinking, wow, this is complicated. And you're right. If getting a real democracy is this hard, why do we even bother? Why is it still held up as the best form of government? Well, you've heard the arguments against it, right? It's unstable, it's slow, it can be corrupt and messy. But the arguments for it, man, they are powerful. We're talking about a government that's actually accountable to its people. Better decisions because you have to debate and discuss them. A way to deal with deep disagreements without resorting to violence. And maybe the most important one, it enhances the dignity of every single citizen. Let me give you a really stark example. Look at this number, 30 million. That's about 3 core people. It's the estimated number of people who died during China's famine from 1958 to 1961. It is the single worst famine in all of recorded world history. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. During that exact same time, India's economic situation wasn't much better. But India did not have a famine on that scale. So what was the difference? Well, many economists argue it was democracy. In democratic India, you had a free press and opposition parties that could criticize the government, forcing them to respond to the food scarcity. In non-democratic China, there was no such accountability. The result was a historic catastrophe. So to wrap all this up, I want to leave you with one final thought. It's so important to remember that democracy isn't just about what happens in government buildings or at the ballot box. I mean, listen to this quote. "We are a very democratic family. My opinion matters as much as my father's." It's a great reminder that democracy is also a principle. It's a way of making decisions that involves consulting people and respecting everyone's voice, whether that's in a family, a classroom, or a company. And that really brings us to the big takeaway question, doesn't it? Is democracy something a country just has, like a finished product you can put on a shelf? Or is it something that we, the citizens, have to do? It reminds us that the fate of democracy doesn't just depend on what our rulers do. It depends on the active participation of all of us, every single day.